It was a collapse of giant proportions as the New York Giants fell to the Denver Broncos 33-32. The breakdown is coming up next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, welcome on into our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, Giant fans, you know what? I've been covering this team for over 30 years, and just when I think I have seen it all, the Giants find a way to top themselves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the case in this week's game. The Giants losing a wild one, 33-32 to the Denver Broncos, a game that the Giants had no business losing. But we're going to break down why they lost. All right. We're going to take a look at, as always, we'll look at the offense and some general, things that contribute to the loss. But I really want to shine a light on the defense, because that, to me, was the biggest culprit in this loss. And I'll tell you why in segment 2. And then where do they go from here? Is the season over? Probably. I mean, do they bother trading for a receiver? We'll talk about all that stuff, including the fates of Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, Shane Bowen, and the whole coaching staff. So that's what's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Giants. Welcome on into everybody. All right, let's get into it. For the first half of the game, the Giants and the Broncos were almost even in some key statistics, such as the quarterback performance. Both quarterbacks were 9 of 19. The difference, of course, being Bo Nix only threw for 82 yards. Jaxson Dart threw for 169 yards. Nix was sacked twice. Dart sacked once. Dart also had 2 touchdowns. All right. The defense along the way played well for 3 quarters. All right. They had 5 batted passes, which you don't see a whole lot of, but it showed they were getting their hands up even when they were stonewalled by the Broncos. So I was happy to see that. The Giants in the first half, 203 net yards to Denver's 102. They were averaging 6.2 yards per play to Denver's 3. The Giants were good on third down. They finished 6 of 15, 40%. They were 100% on fourth down. They were better than the Broncos in the penalty department, 8 penalties to 12. The Giants were good in the red zone. So basically, the Giants did enough to win this game, and they should have won this game. So where did things go wrong? You can start with the 2 missed extra points by Jude McIntyre. That is inexcusable. I'm sorry. If you're an NFL kicker, those are chip shots. You got to make those. And he didn't. So he misses the first one. Then on the next touchdown, the Giants go for 2, which they don't make. And, I guess the thinking there was, let's make up for the 1 point we missed. Okay, they didn't make it. Then they have another extra point attempt later on in the game. They missed that one. All right, folks, Jude McIntyre, nice kid. He's a Rutgers alum like myself. He can't kick anymore for this team. I'm sorry. Cannot kick anymore. Now, Graham Gano, I don't know if he's eligible. I think he might have another week. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. But if Graham Gano is healthy, you activate him. If he is not healthy, you bring up Young Ho Koo, because this kid cannot be trusted to kick any further. All right. Another case of the kicker screwing the Giants. That was the difference basically in the game. All right. If they make those extra points, then maybe they win. Wasn't the lone reason why the Giants lost, but it was a big one. Now, some people will look at the interception that Jaxson Dart threw late in the game. Yes, he forced the ball into a spot that he shouldn't have forced it to. But you know what? Got to defend it. And I will talk about the defense in detail in the next segment. So, yes, it was a mistake by Jaxson Dart. Should he get a pass? No, because that contributed to the loss. But this is to be expected with a rookie quarterback. You're going to have growing pains. He's still trying to figure out what throws he can make and what throws he can't. Well, now he knows he can't make that throw. And that particular throw, interestingly enough, I don't think that throw had enough lift on it. I think if he had gotten a little bit more lift, maybe that ball goes to where it was intended. How much of Dart's ankle issue factored into that throw? Was he able to, push off or land to where maybe he couldn't get enough arm into it? Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. All I know is that interception led to a Broncos score. And it was a wild fourth quarter, let me tell you. So when it was all said and done, the Giants snapped the streak. 1,602 consecutive teams had won their games when they were up 18 or more points in the final 6 minutes of a game. The Giants broke that streak. They made history, the wrong kind of history. All right. But they allowed Bo Nix to have in one quarter, the fourth quarter, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, which I believe was the first time that has happened in the fourth quarter in the league. Giants keep making the wrong kind of history. So, I don't know what to say. I really don't. It's like just when I think they have turned the corner and I think, oh, the arrow's pointing up, they go right back to doing stupid stuff that cost them games. And the offense, they fought. I don't think the offense was horrible. Again, glad to see the tight ends stepping up. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in segment 3. But the Giants just keep finding ways to hurt themselves. And at this point, after the game, the mood in the locker room, you could see, it wasn't upbeat. Brian Burns was said to be crying at his locker room. All right. And he wasn't crying because he was in pain from the ankle injury he sustained. Jaxson Dart, probably, I haven't seen the transcripts yet, but Jaxson Dart probably upset with himself over throwing that interception. And oh, by the way, Jaxson Dart suffered what looked like an ankle injury. How much mobility did he have after that? Not a whole lot. You didn't see him moving around in the pocket as much as he was. So you add that, and then you had injuries, like I said, to Brian Burns, whose foot was in a boot, Javon Holland, who had a knee injury, Paulson Adebo, who had a knee injury, and I don't know how many other guys got hurt. And it was just an ugly, ugly outcome for a Giants team that, after beating the Philadelphia Eagles, just went right back to being the Pumpkins and letting their fan base down. If you thought the offense, that interception and the missed PATs were the culprit, wait till we talk about the defense coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier. But now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's sad. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments in one system, Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busy work, and silos of your that your software created. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and perfectly in sync. It's seriously simple to use and gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one or just fill the gaps in your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnfl. That's RIPPLING.com/lockedonnfl to get 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineup after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And gosh, just when you think you've got the Giants figured out, they do something stupid. All right. And speaking of stupid, let's talk about the defense. Okay. You know, I want to believe in Shane Bowen. I really do. But if anybody out there can please explain to me why he, late in the game, was only rushing 3 men and dropping 8 into coverage, please do. All right. Now, I get it. You're missing Javon Holland. You're missing Paul Sonadebo. You've got Deonte Banks back there who didn't exactly have a good game either. But you're only rushing 3 against 5? I mean, at least rush 4. They've been good with rushing 4. Why are you dropping an extra guy back into coverage? And by the way, after the game, the defense, some of the defensive players, they weren't too happy, presumably over the play call. So I don't understand what Shane Bowen was doing there. And Brian Dable on the sideline was seen yelling at Shane Bowen. You think maybe he was saying the same thing I'm saying? Now, let's talk numbers. In the fourth quarter alone, the Giants defense gave up 227 net yards of offense. 227 net yards. A number that, if we're going to put into perspective, in the past, the Giants offense would take 4 quarters to maybe accumulate. But the Broncos got that in 1 quarter. And oh, by the way, the Broncos also scored 33 points in 1 quarter. Unheard of. Unbelievable. The rushing yardage, Denver, 142 yards on the ground. So the run defense went back to being pumpkins again. 53 of the 142 rushing yards came in the fourth quarter. 174 yards of the 279 passing yards came in the fourth quarter. And when it was all said and done, 227 net yards. How does that happen? I wish I had an answer. I really do. But, some of the play calling on defense, especially after seeing how Shane Bowen was so aggressive against the Eagles, it's like he went back to his old habits. And they lost. It was a game they should have won. It was fun for a good 3 quarters plus. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, what on earth is going on here? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And listen, let's go back to the fourth quarter here. 0 hits, 0 sacks, 0 tackles for loss, 0 interceptions, 0 pass breakups. Were these guys playing defense or what was going on? The play calling was just, what were they doing? The run defense, like I said, got gashed. There were 3 runs in this game of 15 or more yards by the Broncos, including an 18-yard touchdown run by Bo Nix, which, by the way, Deonte Banks, who had to come in for Paulson Adebo, took a bad angle on. At this point with Deonte Banks, why even put him out there? I'd rather they play Art Green out there than Deonte Banks because it just seems like every time Deonte Banks is out there, something bad happens. And then when something bad happens, he loses his confidence and everything snowballs. So, again, I don't know what to say. I know I'm laughing here, but I don't mean to laugh because it's just so frustrating. And really, you look at this performance, the offense wasn't horrible. Special teams, once again, the only bright spot. They won the field position battle again, as they have done basically every week this year. It's not enough. You need all 3 elements to play solid ball, and the Giants just aren't getting that. The defense was a big, big problem this week. Big problem. And I'm not putting it all on the players, by the way. I'm putting that on Bowen. Because Bowen, after being aggressive against the Eagles and having success, just went right back into that shell. And it cost them. It cost them. So now you have a Giants team that is what, 2-5? That season is circling the drain again, folks. Just when we thought that maybe it would be salvaged, maybe they could pull it out. And with a win over Denver, that would have made them what, 3-4, which would have been a lot more respectable. Now you say to yourself, okay, now you're riding high because you beat the Chargers, a postseason participant. You beat the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champion, and you beat the Broncos, who were also a postseason participant last year. But no, we're right back to where we started from. So that being said, where does this team go from here? Well, they're on their way back to New Jersey as I record this. They've got the Eagles on the road in that house of horrors known as the Link, where the Giants haven't won, I think, since 2013. All right, the Eli Manning era. But where do they go from here? We'll talk about it right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season is here and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the apps. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. We're breaking down a 33-32 loss by the Giants to the Denver Broncos, a loss that shouldn't have happened. Let's just call it for what it is. It should not have happened, but it did. And here we are talking about a season that is circling the drain again. So where do the Giants go from here? Well, the short-term fix, I guarantee you they will have a new kicker by next week, if not by tomorrow. Right? That's obvious. As far as the injuries go, we better all hope that Paulson Adebo's knee injury is not something that's going to keep him out long term, because they cannot continue to put Deonte Banks out there. Right? We did an article over on New York Giants on SI where Deonte Banks actually had a good shutdown rate, but the inconsistency that he brings to the table is just maddening, because the talent is there. You know he's got talent. You know he can make plays, but when he just up and down and you never know what you're going to get from play to play, you can't have that. And like I said, I'd rather Art Green be out there at this point if Paulson Adebo can't go. All right. What do they do with the coaching staff? Does Shane Bowen get relieved of his duties? I don't think so. Not this week. Maybe do they look at it during the bye? I don't know. I personally think they're going to wait until after the season. But Bowen, again, you're rushing 3 late in the game against a quarterback who's not very good against pressure, and you're dropping 8 into coverage. Wow. Just wow. All right. Now, here's a big question. Will the Giants trade for a receiver? I would say at this point, no. If there was any doubt, this game cinched it. Now, why do I say that? Because I think if the Giants had won this game, like I said, they would have been 3-4 with a chance to even out their record and salvage their season. They are 2-5. The season is fast going down the tubes. So why would you look to trade for a receiver now? What good is that going to do, especially when your tight ends are stepping up and they are delivering the goods for you? So no, folks, I don't think the Giants are going to trade for a receiver. I would be very, very surprised if they trade for a receiver. And I know the argument is, well, get Jaxson Dart more weapons in here. I don't see it happening. Not with where they are right now. What else can the Giants change? Again, I don't know. Would Dable strip Shane Bowen of the play calling duties on defense and say to Andre Patterson, maybe, hey, you do it now? I doubt it. But again, Dable was pretty steamed at Bowen on the sidelines. But, at this point, I don't know what the answers are. I know a lot of you are like, fire everybody. Shane's got to go. Dable's got to go. This one's got to go. Here's the bottom line, guys. Being objective here. Shane brought in the talent. And yes, we could say that some of the talent hasn't worked out. Evan Neal, Deonte Banks come to mind. But there was enough talent to beat the Chargers. There was enough talent to beat the Eagles. There was enough talent for this team to be competitive for almost 3.5 quarters of play against the Broncos. I don't think, folks, it's necessarily the talent. The coaching, yeah, that's where I think the problem is. Do I think Brian Dable just took another step into the quicksand? I don't know. I think it's all going to depend at the end of the year. Okay? When he sits down, if he, assuming he doesn't make any changes on his staff, when he sits down and objectively says, okay, you know what? Teams are still going up and down the field against my defense. Bowen's got to go. Remember, that was something John Mara talked about at the end of last year, how he was tired of seeing teams march up and down against the defense. No changes were made, but the problems still continue. So, as far as changes go, I just don't think there's going to be any made this week. And I'll tell you what, After a game like this, that locker room was dejected. How could you not be? You put your heart and soul, you battle it out, only to have nothing to show for it. And the more dejections that team takes, the more that locker room is at risk of being lost, especially if the head coach doesn't do something about it. Giving them a pep talk or a pat on the back, that's not going to get it done. Something's got to give. Will it give this week? I don't know. Will it give this season? I don't know. But I know something's got to give because this team is better than what it has shown, what its record has shown. But as the great Bill Parcells used to say, you are what your record says you are. And the Giants right now, 2-5. And that's just not good enough for a fan base that has suffered through week after week after week of lousy football. Hang in there, Giant fans. I'm right there with you. Group hug, if we could. We'll keep breaking it down. I'll keep looking at stuff, trying to get you all the latest on the New York Giants. I know this was maybe a tough one to get through. Hopefully it was a little therapeutic for you, everybody out there. Thank you for tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast. You guys and gals are the best, and you deserve so much better from this football team. The NFL season is finally here. So for your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, be well. I'll see you tomorrow with an all-new episode of Locked On Giants.